Трішки накладка вийшла, я на 5 хвилин затримаюся, ви поки що збирайтеся, відмічайте, хто присутній, і через 5 хвилиночок я до вас повернуся і ми продовжимо лекцію. Так, ну добре, доєдналися, тоді будемо продовжувати. Так, ну, по-перше, що я б хотіла сказати, я подивилася Google файл, в який ви розпочали записуватися. Прогрес я бачу, добре. Значить, у мене, в принципі, коментар до, не буду називати прізвища, так, але до формулювання. Зараз я відкрию до формулювання функціональних вимог. Тобто, будь ласка, команди, передивіться уважно, як ви сформулювали функціональні вимоги. Наприклад, зараз. Перше, не потрібно функціональні вимоги у колонці назва, опис проєкту, да? Не потрібно функціональні вимоги розшифровувати тут у Google файлі, як вони будуть вами розроблені. Тобто функціональні вимоги – це, наприклад, реєстрація користувачів, а не потрібно писати волонтери та волонтерські організації можуть створити обліковий запис. Це все ви будете писати у СРС-документі. Тут можна це не писати. Так, далі. Зараз не пам'ятаю, де я це читала. Користувач свайпом вліво може відхилити додавання до списку фільмів. Це як буде та чи інша функціональна вимога реалізована, але не потрібно це описувати у Google файлі, бо це вже не функціональна вимога, це не є функціональна. Тобто, зрозуміло. Так, ще в мене було питання. Система... Так, от, система повинна надавати інтуїтивний та зручний інтерфейс. Це чітко нефункціональна вимога. Будь ласка, приберіть її з функціональних. Так, можливість швидкого та точного пошуку кампанії, швидко це не функціональна вимога. Тобто, будь ласка, подивіться, це добре, що ви заповнюєте, добре, що у вас є якісь неточності, ви їх зараз подивитеся, ну не зараз, а після лекції, та перепишете. Так, ну зрозуміло. Тобто хтось перший написав от назву і розшифровку, і всі інші пішли також це писати. Або жирним там виділіть, де от саме функціональна вимога, а де там розшифровка. Ну, тобто, бо це занадто багато тут для Google файлу. Так, і, наприклад, користувач має щось там додавати, редагувати, видаляти. Це можна замінити одною функціональною вимогою редагування, наприклад, там чогось. Так, це такі трохи коментарі щодо оформлення функціональних вимог. Я спеціально не називаю ні прізвище, ні ім'я, це не потрібно робити зараз. Ви всі знаєте, про кого йде мова. Ну, значить, після лекції, будь ласка, ви зверніть на це увагу, бо треба трошки переписати. Так, зараз ще там доєднується хтось.
Вибачте, у мене питання.
Да.
Чи є якісь письмові вимоги до проєкту?
Що означає письмова вимога до проєкту? Ви маєте на увазі технічні вимоги чи що?
Ну, взагалі, вимоги до проєкту, просто щоб воно у письмовому вигляді було.
Ну, я розказувала це на першій лекції доволі довго і доволі багато давала прикладів. Це на оцінку А і Б, якщо коротко, то це веб-сервіс плюс мобільний додаток. Якщо це на оцінку нижче, ніж 75, це може бути або веб-сервіс, або мобільний додаток. Якщо про мобільний додаток, то це для iOS, Android. Якщо це тільки веб-сервіс, то це веб-сервіс. А щодо функціоналу, все буде узгоджуватися з вашим продакт-оунером. Тобто наразі вам потрібно розділитися на команди та сформулювати функціональні вимоги. А далі вже, коли у вас буде продакт-оунер, так, назначений, то ви з ним будете зустрічатися і узгоджувати ваш проєкт. Тобто, що ви будете робити, які функціональні вимоги потрібно додати, виділити. Ну, тобто, це вже буде все деталізуватися на наступному етапі. Наступний етап розпочнеться з 1 жовтня. Так, я на 1 хвилинку зараз переключуся і повернуся через хвилинку. Так, добре, продовжуємо. Так, це перше, тобто функціональні вимоги передивитися. Далі. Прошлої лекції ми розбирали з вами СРС-документ. І зараз я б хотіла розпочати трішки на початку лекції, розказати вам СРС-документ, те, що ви вже скоро почнете робити. Зараз я відкрию гарний приклад СРС-документу, пройдуся дуже швиденько по пунктам цього СРС-документу. І далі тоді ми вже продовжимо з новою темою файлу. Бо ви будете скоро заповнювати СРС, мені потрібно, щоб ви розуміли, що в кожному з цих пунктів писати. Зараз. Так, добре, зараз я розшарю екран. Так, зараз ви бачите на екрані. Зараз ви бачите на екрані цей СРС-документ. Зараз я буду його коментувати вам. Так, добре. Тобто, перше, з чого ми розпочинаємо наш СРС-документ, це, все дуже логічно і дуже просто. Ви пишете назву, так, ви англомовний поток. Okay, so we start our SRS document with the title of the project. This SRS document was about Startup Club Nure Online. It was a few years ago when one of my team described, we had Startup Club in Nure. It were placed in our science park, and plus the students decided to create some online tool which will help students to work with each other but online. Okay, so this is the name of the project, software requirement specification, version 1, date of creation of this version 1 SRS document. As you remember, we will have more than one version of SRS document because through the development cycle, we will make some changes in requirements and functional and non-functional requirements, so your SRS document will be changed. Okay, this is the lead of the team, Vladislav. Next, it's revision history. So, revision history show you the date of revision, version, and the author. Also, here you can input the name and the titles of your team. So the team which will participate in the SRS document. We talk with you that all of you will participate in creation of this document. So in real life, business analytic will be responsible for SRS document, but in our study course, all of you will participate in this document. So you will list all of the members. Okay. We will start from the first point. Actually, I think that next week, after we will agree, 1st of October, when we will agree the product owner to each team, you can start to fill in this document, and you will start from the first point, scope. Scope show you what is the purpose of the system, what is the aim of the system, who will use the system. So here you can read that, for example, the Startup Club Nure Online is an online system which will help people to learn about startup clubs activities and see the startups which were created by the club members. So they also define here the types of the users or the roles of the system. They will have visitors, and after they name this role, they start to describe what kind of activities will be available for this type of user. For example, visitors can see the information about startups, incubator programs, events, and so. The next role of the system will be club members. Then they describe what types of activities will be available for club members. So club members, they can create and edit web pages of their startups using the service. The third role of the system will be registered users. So they describe what activities will be available for registered users. You will do the same. So in this point scope, you have to identify the main goal of the system, the types of the users, and which activities are available for each of the role. Actually, I think that after you agreed even within your team what will be the project and the goal of the project, even before the 1st of October, I think you can start describe the first point of a SRS document. It could be as a draft, but then after you will agree the product owner, you can move more quickly because you will already have this draft. So I think, and my advice is to start to define this first and second section even before 1st of October. Okay, the next point will be definitions, acronyms, and abbreviations. You can construct also this the table, or it could be the text. In this part, you have to identify all the definitions or abbreviations which you will use within your system. So this team, for example, they describe even all roles and like in more details, but also they describe all of the definitions which will be in their web server, so it's very convenient. Okay, next it's references. Remember, I told you that you will use Google Drive to store all kinds of documentation. So here in references, you can even make a link to your Google Drive and Google folder where you will store all the documentation in each sprint. But also here you can input the references to another systems, standards, whatever. Overview. Overview, it's like what will be in the structure of your documentation, what will be in each point of a SRS document. Okay, so the first point, the first part of this SRS document is just general representation of your project. So I will repeat one more time. You can start it even before the 1st of October because it will not change so much after you will have a meeting with your product owner. Next part, second part. Second part describe you more details about your future project. It's more about like design of your project. So project perspective. In this part, you have to write what will do your system, what it can give, what it can bring to your end users, what values it will bring to your end users. This team, they create very detailed SRS document, and they even input here a deployment diagram which show on which part will be divided your system. So they describe that the system will consist of database, of web server, and client part, and they describe it even with the text. So they write a database server contain MySQL database and so. Then the web server will do this, and this, and the client part will do this, and this. So even very detailed, they make the design of the future system. Next part, it's product functions. Product functions, it's very simple. You will just copy your functionality from the Google document and then paste it here in this part. So product functions will show to product owner, and it will show to your team which functionality will be available for end users. It could be the text, but my advice is to draw it like a list. So just list of functionality of your project. For example, registration, authorization, I don't know, order the products, buy products. So the list of functions. And here you should not write any detailed description or functionality or how it should work. So for this detailed explanation of functionality, we will have another part of the document. So actually, you also can input the draft of functionality from Google document here in this point 2.2. If you have any questions, please, you can ask me. Next part, it's about user characteristics. So roles of users within your system. For example, you create electronic e-shop, so you will have people who sell the products, you will have people who buy the products, you will have administrator of the system. So please specify here the user roles. Plus, you have to identify which activities or which functionality will be available for each of this role. For example, in this system, they have 4 types of user characteristics. They have visitors, which can only use the system to look for information about startups and club members, but they can't do anything. Then they have another role, registered user. They can rate and comment the startups. Then they have startuppers and club members. This is the third role. They can create and edit startup pages, give information about their startups. Then they have the fourth role, is administrator, and they must have access to ban the user, change the permission. So they very shortly describe user characteristics and available functionality. General constraints. General constraints, it's about constraints to your system. We talk on the first lecture, we talk about constraints. Constraints, it's not only about technical constraints of your system. It could be constraints on the language. It could be constraints on the, I don't know, type of the files which you upload to download. So any kind of constraints. Next point, it's assumptions and dependencies. You have to list 2 or 3 assumptions and 2 or 3 dependencies. It will be enough for your system. For example, the system work will be dependent on the, I don't know, some technologies. For example, in this example, the team wrote that HTML5 or later version of HTML will be okay for their system. You can also write technical dependencies. It will be okay for this part. Part number 3, external interface requirements. Here in this part, it will be more about technical part or technical side of your application. And here you have to describe user interfaces, hardware, software, and communication interfaces of your system. You can start from software interfaces, for example. It will be the most simple part for you because you, I think that you already discussed within your team which kind of technology you will use. Yeah, so you can start from this point. And part about user interfaces, hardware, and communication, you can, for example, leave for the second version of a SRS document. So it will be also okay if you will edit this part during your 0th sprint or even in the beginning of the first sprint, it will be okay. Next part, it's about functional requirements. And this is the most important part of this SRS document. From my point of view, this is very important for your product owner. So as you remember, you wrote the list of functional requirements in Google document. Then you input functional requirements in the part 2.2 in the beginning of this document. For example, you have 10 functional requirements in Google Docs, then you should have the same 10 functional requirements in the second part of SRS document. It was part 2.2 product functions. So I'm, as a product owner, I will check that the name of your functional requirement and that the amount of functional requirements will be the same in each part of this document. It's very important. So you can copy functional requirements from this part 2.2, input them into this part 3.2 functional requirements. But here in each functional requirements, you have to describe very detailed how it will work in your system. And this part is very important for your team, for team of developers and testers. So, for example, the first name of the function will be registration. So as a bold text, you input the name of the function, for example, registration. And then you have six points, 6 parts or subparts where you describe in more details. In first part, you have to input introduction. Introduction means that you describe how this function registration will work within your system. For example, unregistered users or visitors, they don't have many permissions because it may lead to hacker attacks. So they must go through the registration process. For this, user must create accounts, then they have to input, for example, login password and email. This moves him to registration form. So this is introduction about this specific function. Next point is inputs. Inputs show you what information you have to input in the beginning of this function. So to make registration, you have to input what? For example, login, email, and password. Okay, then it's important to identify the constraints to each of these parts. So login, for example, minimum 4 symbols or characters, yes, maximum 32. For email, minimum 4, maximum 32. And for example, it's mandatory to have symbol add and dot within your email. So all these constraints, it's mandatory to input because it's very important, because after you describe these functions such detailed, you give this document to your programmers. They will open this description and then they will understand how they should develop this function registration. Moreover, this description will be very important to your tester, because testers, they also will look at this SRS document and they will write their test cases, so their testing documentation according to these input requirements. Next part, it's processing. Processing describe how this function will work inside your program. This will also lead to programmer's task. Next part is output. What happened after this function will work correctly? For example, if the form was filled successfully after sending client, show message that the verification link has been sent to user's email. If the form was filled unsuccessfully, the message was incorrect and so information will appear or something like this. Error handling. Next point will show you what happened if this function worked incorrectly or if you input incorrect information. And here you have to also identify step by step, very detailed, what happened if I input login incorrectly, if I input password incorrectly. Constraints. Constraints show you constraints for your current function registration. Then we go to next function. Next function in your application will be login, for example. So in the same way, you have to define inputs, outputs, introduction, processing, and error handling to your function login. So if you define, for example, 10 functions in the beginning of SRS document, then to each 10 function, you have to apply this format of identifying introduction, input, processing, output, error handling, and constraints. So as you can see, this is quite long description of your functional requirements. For example, this group of students, they had, I don't remember, but more than 20 functions. So their SRS document, it's about 38 pages. I don't ask you to have 30, 40, 50 functions. No, it will depend on your project, but now you can see the structure. Okay, I scroll this document because I had a lot of functions, but it's quite good example, and I already upload this example into the daily UA, so you can use it. Okay, 1 second. Okay, after you describe all functions in the same way using this template, we move to the next part, and next part will be UML diagrams, and we'll start from our use case diagram. So all of you know how to construct a use case diagram. You can use any tool to construct this use case diagram. If you have any questions, please, you can write me. I will give you some examples of the system which you can use. So my advice is not to create SRS doc. My advice is not to create a use case diagram for whole the system, because it will be not convenient to read and understand. My advice is to construct use case diagram for each role type of your system. So if you have, for example, 2 roles in your system, for example, I don't know, teachers and students, then you will present me 2 use case diagrams, 1 for teacher, 1 for student. You're familiar with use case diagram, I would not explain you how to construct it. So it's mandatory to construct use case diagram on the beginning of our work. So on the 0 sprint, it's mandatory to create this use case diagram. It will be very convenient to communicate with you. I mean, product owner will communicate with each team, and it will be very convenient if you will present use case diagram, so we can discuss your system looking at this diagram. Okay, so you create use case diagram for each role in your system, and it's also very convenient to check if you're correct or no, because I will open the first part of SRS document where you have part user roles or user characteristics, and if in this part you define that you have 3 roles in your system, then you should have 3 case diagrams. So it's very convenient. Okay. Next part, it's also use case for each role. Next part is it could be class or objects, or it could be also diagrams. This part, I think you have to remember or write somewhere some notes, because, for example, this point, class and objects, you can finish during your first sprint. Even during your first sprint, it will be okay. You should not show it in the beginning, because you will have design of your system during 0 and first sprint. So it's okay if you will input class and objects a little bit later, not before the first sprint. So for the late stages, it's okay. And next part, it will be part about non-functional requirements. So previously, you will describe very detailed functional requirements of the system. Functional requirements show us the functionality of your system. But then we have to describe non-functional requirements. Non-functional requirements show us how the system will work. So when I check the Google document, I see a few non-functional requirements which you input in Google document. And it was requirements about performance, about usability, about portability. So please, this is the part 3.5 where you should input non-functional requirements. Actually, there are much more non-functional requirements types than you can see here. But for us, it's enough if you will define just 6 non-functional requirements. This is requirements about performance, reliability, availability, security, maintainability, and portability. Also, non-functional requirements you can finish during the 0 sprint or beginning of the first sprint. It will be okay for all the teams. Don't forget that non-functional requirements should be described with some numbers. So it's not just general representation that systems should work quickly. No, this is not good for SRS, because for somebody quickly it's 1 second, for somebody quickly it's 10 seconds. So you have to describe everything quantitative. Yes, we have to measure each non-functional requirements. To make your life more simple, I download input some examples of SRS document with non-functional and functional requirement description in DL, so you can check it. Next point will be about design constraints and logical database requirements. Also, database will be, I think, in 80% of your project. So almost all projects will contain database. For this, you have to draw entity relationship diagram and input it in SRS document. Also, entity relationship diagram you can input in SRS document during your first sprint. It will be also okay, because you will during your first sprint, in the beginning, you will have time for designing of your system. And this time you can spend for class diagram, for ER diagram, so it will be okay. So you will have, for example, SRS version 2, and in the second version of your SRS document, you will input all this type of diagrams. Also, here you will input DFD diagrams, the transition and sequence diagram, and it's also okay if you will input them into the first sprint. So it's also okay. You can leave this part for first sprint. So let's agree that before the first sprint, you have to show to your product owner all parts before part 3.4. So the last part, which is mandatory, you finish with use case. Okay, I finish with this very detailed description of SRS document. Please, any questions? Так, студенти, якщо у вас з'явилися будь-які питання щодо заповнення SRS-документу, я постаралася дуже детально його описати, показати вам на дуже гарному прикладі. Якщо є якісь питання, як заповнювати той чи інший пункт, будь ласка, задавайте зараз. Бо, в принципі, ще раз, ми розпочинаємо з першого пункту. Перший пункт, там, де цілі проєкту, характеристики користувачів, ви вже можете починати заповнювати. Навіть до того, як ми надали вам продакт оунера, бо це буде чернетка, вона не дуже зміниться. Це перша частина. Далі, другу і третю частину ви повинні будете завершити повністю на протязі нульового спринта. До початку першого спринта. Це буде до 8 жовтня. Тобто з 1 по 8 жовтня ви повинні будете закінчити ваш SRS-документ. І останній обов'язковий пункт – це ось там, де use case діаграми. Далі вже там, де йдуть додаткові діаграми, такі як діаграма класів, діаграма стану, послідовності, sequence, DFD, це можна буде доробити протягом першого спринту. Бо на першому спринті для кожної команди у вас буде виділений час на проєктування системи. Це нормально. І там ви можете будувати всі ці діаграми, зробити, наприклад, SRS версія 2, додати всі ці діаграми і презентувати це на першому спринті вашому продакт-оунеру. Якщо щось зараз не зрозуміло, будь ласка, питайте.
У мене питання. Прошу.
Так. Яке питання?
Питання стосовно, якщо, наприклад, були видвинуті якісь певні вимоги до цієї системи, але потім в процесі було виявлено, що неможливо це виконати. Як це далі узгоджується з продуктом?
Це ви кажете про функціональні вимоги?
Так.
Ну, це абсолютно нормально по agile, коли ви зараз напишете ряд функціональних вимог, і навіть ви їх узгодите з вашим продакт-оунером, він скаже, так, добре, я згоден, ви робите цю систему, мені все подобається. На якомусь етапі, скажімо, там, після першого спринту, ви зрозумієте, що якісь вимоги вам вже не потрібні, а якісь ви не зможете виконати. Ну, це нормально, ви їх видалите, ці вимоги, можливо, замість цих ви додасте якісь інші.
Добре, дякую.
Тобто по agile це така flexible, зараз буду розказувати методологія, що це абсолютно окей. Але все ж таки ми з чогось починаємо, так? У нас є якийсь ряд вимог, ми їх формулюємо, записуємо в Google документ та ОСРС, малюємо нашу use case діаграму, далі я розкажу, які ми ще документи створимо, починаємо працювати. Ну, ми ж не можемо ні з чого почати. А далі вже, якщо вони будуть якось змінюватися, видалятися, додаватися, це абсолютно окей. І це так і буде. А я знаю, ну, з моєго досвіду, тобто буває таке, що от приходить класна команда, в них суперова ідея, ми робимо функціонал, узгоджуємо його, обов'язково ми робимо, виставляємо пріоритети, це вже ви будете з продакт-оунером перед першим спринтом робити. Пріоритети ми зробили, найбільш складні такі фічі ми винесли на останок, і коли ось доходить команда до, скажімо, четвертого спринту до останнього, вони розуміють, що якісь фічі, які вони залишили на останок, вони вже не можуть їх зробити, ну це чи складно, чи не вистачає часу, ну ми з розумінням на це ставимося, це нормально. Якщо тільки ми не беремо ситуацію, коли команда не виконує завдання, тобто просто байдикує чи нічого не робить, ну це, звичайно, це, звичайно, неприйнятно. Так, добре. Якщо питань немає, тоді я звертаю цей документ. Він же є на делі, він дуже класнючий, бо його заповнював класний бізнес-аналітик. Так, тепер я тоді відкриваю agile. Тобто друга наша мета сьогодні – це поговорити, розпочати, розуміти, що таке agile. Зараз розширю лекцію. Так, ну в мене ще питання, як звичайно, ми можемо працювати без перерви, закінчити раніше, чи ми зробимо перерву? Як ви хочете, мені все одно.
Давайте без перерви.
Так, тоді зараз. Так, добре, сьогодні розказую Agile, наступний раз буду розказувати вже Scrum, бо Scrum він є, ну, якби основним представником Agile. Так, зараз, секундочку. Так, окей, so we start from Agile. Agile is a flexible methodology which help you to develop software project using some predefined rules or steps. I will not explain you the waterfall model because all of you are familiar with this model, but I would like to make some comparison with traditional approach and agile approach. So in traditional approaches, you remember, for example, in waterfall model, we go through the predefined steps such as analysis of problem domain, yes, then software requirements, then design, then programming and testing. And each of the steps, they go step by step, so we cannot go through the steps, then we decided to return. No, it's impossible. So, for example, you want to develop some web service, you make analysis, you write the requirements, you make the design of your future system, you start to programming, and then you understand that you made some mistakes on the first stages. For example, you made wrong design or you missed some requirements, but you cannot return to the steps, and you spend some amount of time and you spend the money of your product owner what you should do, you should start from beginning, and it's not good for business people. They would not be satisfied that you spent time and money, but now you have some mistakes, or your product owner decided that he want to do something in another direction. He want to create some new functionality, something like this. So now this model is not popular, as you know, of course, but I should say some comments that some of the companies still use the waterfall model, because waterfall model, as all other models, has some advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of the waterfall model and all traditional models in general, that first of all, they are very simple, they are very understandable. So if the new team member come, you should not spend time for describing him this model. So it's very, very simple. Waterfall model is quite good works for the project where your requirements is sustainable, and you can identify these requirements one time in the beginning of the project, and your requirements would not change. In this situation, if you know your project from the beginning, nothing will be changed. Yes, you can use this waterfall model because, as I told you, it's very simple and very understandable. What kind of project is okay for waterfall model? It could be project related to medical sphere, because, for example, medical sphere, the requirements, they are not changed so quickly. You know how this structure works, so it's okay. But of course, okay, if you want to develop, for example, some very, very simple website or landing page, and you made it 1 million times, and this is not like eShop, for example, so you know the requirements, and your product owner know what he wants, okay, it's small project, and you identify the requirements, and for example, you need 1 or 2 months to develop this very simple website, okay, you can also use waterfall model. But in all other cases, waterfall model not works good. So people discover agile methodology. Agile, it's flexible methodology, and through the lecture today, I will explain many times why it's flexible. So agile methodology, in principle, it's use the same strategy as waterfall model. So the steps inside the agile models will be also almost the same. So as in traditional approach, you go through the same steps: analysis, design, coding, and testing. But in traditional approaches or traditional models, the time scales go down, up and down. Yes, so you go through all the steps, step by step. You cannot return, you cannot go like through the circle. But in agile, the time scales, it's like horizontal, and it means that during each sprint, and you remember the sprint, it's a short period of time from 1 week to a month, and in each sprint we go through all these steps. So in sprint 1 we go through analysis, design, coding, and testing. Then next sprint number 2, we again go through all the steps: analysis, design, coding, and testing. And each sprint we go through all these steps. And it's very convenient because now we are in the sprint 1, you make analysis, design, and in the coding step, you find some mistakes. Okay, this is not the problem. We finish our sprint. Then in 2 weeks, we start new sprint, and we can make any changes in the step analysis or design of the system. So if we find some mistakes, we can fix these mistakes in the next sprint. So we should not wait months or 2 months until we finish all the project. And of course, it's very convenient. This is one of the flexibility of agile approach. Imagine that you finish your sprint, you present your work to your product owner, and the product owner said, you know, I don't like what you develop. I think you will do it another way. I don't like this, this, and this. And you as a team say, okay, in next sprint, we will change everything as you said. We will change the design, or we will change requirements or whatever. Okay, so this is not a problem. This is also flexibility. We can change our requirements even each sprint. So we can add something, we can change something. So it's okay for agile approach. Okay, so after we said that we will use agile methodology, people create agile manifesto. Agile manifesto is like a general representation of the philosophy of agile. You wouldn't find here any technical details. No, it's just general idea of agile approach. And agile manifesto consists of 4 points. You can find it in any language in Google. I will explain it now. Blue part of the each agile statement, left part, blue one, is more important than the right part. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So what does it mean? In agile, individuals, peoples, and interaction between people are much more important for us than following the processes or some tools. So in general, in agile, work is based on the people, motivated people, and individuals. Next, working software over comprehensive documentation. Working software is the most important thing in agile. So after you finish each sprint, you show to your product owner working software. No documentation, not report, but working software. And business people, they evaluate this working software and give you some feedback. Statement number 3, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Of course, we understand that in the beginning of our work, we have to sign some contract, and we will follow this contract. But a customer and relationship with customer is much more important for us. So if customer will give us some comments, suggestions, recommendations, whatever, we will change the contract because the customer is the highest priority for us. And statement number 4, responding to change or following a plan. It's flexibility of agile. Even on the late stages of development, we are ready to changes, and it's flexibility of agile. Please remember this agile manifesto, and I will ask you on the sprints, and all other assistants, I will also ask you about agile manifesto. It's very simple, and it shows you like philosophy of agile. After people create this agile manifesto, they created 12 principles of agile software. These 12 principles of agile software, they explain you much more in details agile manifesto. So now I will explain you these 12 principles, and of course, all of you will follow these principles during our course. They're also not so much about details, technical details, but when we will, I will explain about the Scrum. I will make like links, Scrum techniques and Scrum meetings, artifacts, and whatever to these principles. Okay, so the first principle says that our highest priority is to satisfy the customers through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So the highest priority for each team is satisfy the customers. The customer should be happy. And how? You have to show him working software early. What does it mean early? It means that we will work through the 2-week sprints, and in the end of each sprint, you will show him working software. Second principle, welcome change and requirements even late in the development. It's what I told you. Agile is flexible, and we can change the requirement even on the sprint number 3. You have 4 sprints, and after you show me sprint number 3, I can say you that I would like to change some requirements or add some new requirements. It's okay for Agile. Number 3, Deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with a preference to the shorter time scale. It's what we talk with you many times. You will work through the sprints, and sprints duration will be 2 weeks. Number 4, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. What does it mean? It means that you will have big amount of meetings in Scrum, and you will have a meeting which is called stand-up meeting or daily meeting. Daily meeting, it's understandable from the name of this meeting. It will be everyday meetings. It means that every day, each day, the Scrum team should meet together online. It's not a problem. And if business people, it means your product owner, if he would like to present on this meeting, it's okay. In real life, I know many situations when product owners from, for example, United States, they are present on the daily meeting with the team in Ukraine. It means that the team had a meeting every day, and every day in the same time product owner connect to their meeting, so he watched the progress on the project, he gives some feedback, he asks a question. So if business people would like to participate in this meeting, it's okay. In our study course, of course, it's impossible because I have many teams. So for me, it's impossible to present each day in daily meeting. So you will be only within your team. But you should know that it could be also with product owner. Okay, number 5, principle number 5. Build project around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support them what they need and trust them to get the job done. Before we had the war and COVID, in Scrum teams were the people who were responsible for a good atmosphere in the team. So it was person who was responsible, I don't know, from you should have tea and coffee to make breaks and some cookies. And for example, you have bad internet connection, okay, these people will help you. Or for example, I don't know, you want to develop your skills, you want to go to some seminar, so the company can pay for the seminar. So everything to make your work more effective. Principle number 6, the most efficient and effective way of convenient information, it will be face-to-face conversation. In Scrum and in Agile, we talk that you have to work face-to-face, and for this you will have a lot of meeting between the team members, meeting with product owner, meeting with stakeholders, because face-to-face conversation is the best way to get some feedback and to discuss the problems if you have. Okay, principle number 7. Working software is the primary measure of the progress. So working software is the most important things in our work. So the product owner, he wants to see working software. For him, it's not so important to see your reports, as I told you, documentation and whatever. 8, agile processes promote sustainable development. We will talk about sustainable development in the Scrum. What does it mean, sustainable development? You work some amount of hours, and this amount of hours, it's the same each day, each week, each month. So in real life, you know that you have to work each day 8 hours, 5 days per week, means 40 hours per week. So you can predict how many work you can do each week. I will also explain you how to calculate the velocity and capacity of the team and velocity and capacity of each team member. So based on your working experience, you can predict how many functionality you will produce each sprint. And this is sustainable development, so we can calculate everything. Number 9, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design. We say that in Scrum and in Agile, it's very important to have high quality code, and it's important to develop according to some coding standards, according to technical excellence. So for us, it's important. So for us, it's not enough if the functionality will work. We also would like to see in the code that the quality of the code is high level. And Scrum, it's not so much oriented on technical design, but in Agile, there are another methodologies such as, for example, XP, extreme programming. Maybe somebody heard about extreme programming. Extreme programming is also one of the part of Agile. I will describe you XP. And for example, in extreme programming, there are a lot of rules about technical excellence and testing standards and coding standards. So a lot of attention is focused on the technical excellence. Number 10, simplicity is the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. What does it mean, simplicity? We said that in the first stages of development, in the first sprint, we take just the simplest functionality. In this functionality, we make design and code very simple to avoid a big amount of mistakes. And then on the latest stages, on the next sprint, on the third, we can make refactoring, we can make some optimization, and so. Number 11, the best architectures, requirements, and design emerge from self-organizing teams. So we said that Scrum team is self-organizing team. What does it mean? It means that, first of all, Scrum team is independent team like small IT company. You have all the roles within your Scrum team. You have business analytic, you have programmers, testers, architectures. So you can solve all the tasks within the project. From the other point of view, self-organizing team means that you can solve all the problems independently within your team. In your team, you will have Scrum Master, and this is people who will be responsible for solve all kinds of problems. If you cannot solve problems within your team, you can communicate with product owner, with me, for example, but you're self-organizing teams. And the last 12 principles said that at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, and we will work through these regular intervals. At the end of each interval, it means at the end of each sprint, we will look at this sprint, this meeting called retrospective, and we will analyze what was good and what was bad in our sprint. Maybe if we had some problems, how we can solve these problems in next sprint to avoid such kind of problems. So each sprint, the team have to analyze look in the past, yes, and analyze what was bad and how we can solve these problems, how we can improve it in the next sprint. So this is shortly 12 principles of Agile software. If you have any questions, please ask me. If no questions, we can continue. Flavors of Agile. Agile, it's like a big family of methodologies, or it's like umbrella. Inside this umbrella of Agile, we have some very specific methodologies. In our course, I will explain you Scrum, but also one of the most popular, it's Lean, it's Extreme Programming, and Kanban. After I explain you Scrum, I will explain you next week on the next lectures. I will also explain you XP, Extreme Programming, and Kanban. Moreover, I will ask you on the latest sprints, it will be on the sprints 3 and 4, I will ask you to take some some specific requirements from XP and Kanban and try to implement them in Scrum. So I explain how it works, of course, I will give you examples, because methodologies within the Agile, they very good, can be combined with each other. So it's like complementary. Okay, so as I told you, the most popular is Scrum, XP, and Kanban. If you want to find some literature in internet and to read some advanced information about these methodologies, you can just input the name of the methodology and people who invent this methodology. For example, you can input Scrum and Ken Schwaber, and you will find a lot of literature, or XP and Ken Beck, and you will find a lot of advanced literature about these methodologies. Okay, and now my plan is to show you short video. It's very short. It's like summarizing what I told you. Give me 1 minute and I will share my screen. Okay, так, 1 second. Sometimes when I run the video, you cannot hear. Please tell me if you cannot hear, because тут є розшарити вкладку, є розшарити вікно. Я не пам'ятаю, здається, вікно, щоб було все гарно. Бо навпаки вкладку, я завжди путаюсь. Зараз скажете мені.
Розшарити вкладку.
Вкладку, так? Да? Ти також думала, що вкладку. Так. Добре. Воно коротеньке.
Graduation from Stanford University. One fine day, he receives a mail from Star Trek Technologies for an interview for the designation of a software engineer, as referred by the university. Alex was really happy and excited about this, and starts preparing for his interview next week. While he was preparing, Alex came across the term downtime. Alex has no idea. What is a downtime? He decided to seek help from his uncle John, a software engineer. John explained that downtime is a specific time frame allocated to deploy or update changes for a software product in a real-time environment. And this happens because most of the softwares we use today are developed using the waterfall model. For example, Cisco, one of the popular leaders in IT and networking globally, is using agile methodology for their subscription billing platform, SBP, as it was originally developed using the waterfall model. After adopting the agile methodology, Cisco's product improved its overall efficiency, where defects were reduced by 40% compared to the previous releases, and defect removal efficiency increased by 14%. Upon explaining what downtime is, John further added that downtime is a small part of the waterfall model. It is the traditional way of developing softwares using a software development lifecycle, where the whole product is treated as one single unit, and the development of one phase starts only after the completion of the previous phase. Adding new features or updating the existing feature in a waterfall model-based product needs a specific time frame known as downtime to avoid disturbance in the workflow of an organization, where applying changes in a waterfall-based product might produce irrelevant results or product failure. The waterfall model is the earliest or the traditional model used for software development, where the output of one phase acts as the input for the preceding phase, consisting of a series of steps, where each phase has specific deliverables that act as the input for the next phase, as it avoids overlapping of phases, as these phases are dependent on each other. This method is simple and easy to understand, where prerequisites are pre-known, documented earlier, and technology remains static, where there is no need for ambiguous requirements due to the delay in software delivery. In contrast, the final version is available only after completing the entire software lifecycle process, with any deviations if available. Changes in the waterfall model contain high risk, as changes include a new, revised version of the entire software running the entire series of steps again and again. For example, a tap and pay machine, where the machine first validates whether the customer's account is funded with sufficient funds or not, and then initiates the transaction for money transfer. Unless the validation is processed, the transaction cannot be initiated. Alex was curious and asked Uncle John, is there any way to overcome the drawbacks of the waterfall model? John replies, yes. Agile methodology was introduced to overcome the problems faced in the waterfall model, where agile-based products are developed by breaking the entire product process into microservices or phases, which is faster to execute and deploy changes on the go. There is no need to worry about other or previous tasks while working on one particular phase, avoiding product failure. Agile-based products don't require any particular time frame, downtime, to deploy changes. Unlike the waterfall model, where the whole product is treated as one single unit, and each process is dependent on the preceding processes, where deploying changes leads to downtime. How agile products are developed? Agile-based products are developed using the agile lifecycle. At first, the developed product is implemented in an actual working environment for reviews from clients and stakeholders to check its deliverables and functionality. After client reviews, the official product is launched in a real-time working environment, where agile methodology focuses on satisfying the consumer needs by efficiently utilizing the resources and avoiding additional risks or deviations in the product. For example, providing a trial beta version of the software for the end user to experience the software towards its deliverables and results will be helpful in refining and reviewing the product, like Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, etc. After understanding all about agile methodology, Alex asks Uncle John, are companies implementing agile in their workspace nowadays? John replies, yes. Companies are moving towards agile methodology due to its flexibility and advantages over traditional systems. By adopting agile for their Sony Interactive environment, Sony noticed a major difference where there was a reduced planning time by 28% with their framework, and downtime was reduced to the maximum, which made the company save $30 million a year. So here's a question for you. What makes agile different from waterfall model? A. It is dependent on microservices. B. Agile consumes more time. C. The process is broken down into several phases. D. None of the above. Please give it a thought and post your answers in the comments section below. 3 lucky winners will receive Amazon gift vouchers. Agile methodology aims to meet the consumer's requirements to the maximum in deploying changes in a rapidly developing environment, where Agile Manifesto Principles brings an innovative set of rules and protocols to help developers overcome the challenges faced in the traditional practices, waterfall model, making Agile flexible and efficient. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, a thumbs up would be really appreciated. Here's your reminder to subscribe to our channel and click on the...
Okay, so I hope that this small video show you also interactively the main idea of Agile. So our plan is next week we will have lecture where I will describe the Scrum, and it will be very good because you will have to be prepared for the 0 sprint. Next week, you finish your Google Doc. So all the team have to be defined, the functional requirements have to be defined, and I also get a few emails how to select Sigma product owner if you want. I repeat, please input Sigma in the column product owner, and then we will see how many teams want to work with Sigma, and then we will make some interview and select. Okay, any questions about today's topic?
Oh, well, everything is clear as for me.
That's good. I try to make lectures very, very, very simple. Окей, guys, так, дивіться, підсумуємо. Сьогодні у мене є практичне заняття на 5-й парі з групою з другою, але якщо у когось є якісь практичні питання, як сформулювати функціональні вимоги там, чи ще щось, будь ласка, можуть і інші групи доєднуватися. І сьогодні на ПЗ, у кого є які питання, особливо по Google файлу, а також, може, по SRS-документу, будемо розбирати. Ще раз повторю, ПЗ та лаби в нас проходять у форматі ваші питання, мої відповіді. Так як ви ще на стадії формування вашого проєкту, то от які питання є по тому, що ви зараз робите, будь ласка, задавайте. Якщо хтось хоче узгодити тему, функціональні вимоги, ну також, будь ласка, доєднуйтесь із інших груп, це буде абсолютно ок. Ну все, я на сьогодні все. Ви вільні, відмічайте свою присутність, і тоді на 5 пари, у кого є питання, будь ласка, доєднуйтесь.
До побачення.
Добре, дякую вам. До побачення.
До побачення.
До побачення.
До побачення.